All right. Boy, are we in trouble, guys. You know, I posted up on our Facebook page today the idea that we are in major trouble with the surveillance from the NSA. And I got to tell you, they're now releasing information that these programs that the NSA has got can sift through 75% of all U.S. traffic in the nation, and can ensnare emails of Americans. We didn't have to wait for the Ministry of Propaganda to tell us this is the case. We've known it. There's tons and tons and tons of alternative media out there that have been telling us the truth. What we're not getting is the actual truth from them. They wait until there's so much groundswell on non-mainstream media, truthful media, dispelling the propaganda of the ministry, that they are forced to then kind of relinquish a little bit. But then they bias it by putting it in their own terms that kind of make it sound like it's really not that big a deal. And, we've known this all along, right? I've been talking about this. Look, guys, when I was talking about Carnivore and Echelon back in the 90s, people said, come on, you're wearing a tinfoil hat. There's no such thing. Well, Carnivore became publicly known about. That was the FBI's system that actually captured and scanned email and so forth. And Echelon is a system which I told people about 20 years ago. And Echelon is essentially what we now have, what they call PRISM. Echelon is it's a combination between, at that time it was a combination between the United States, the UK, and Australia. The UK was monitoring us, we were monitoring Australia, and Australia was monitoring the UK, and then everybody was just shifting the data around to say, see, we're not spying on our own people. But they let another country do it, and then they just handed the data off. And they're doing the same thing now. It's just that the technology has expanded to allow it to become so prevalent, so large, so immense, that there's no way for us to even recognize how deep down the rabbit hole we've fallen. We've known this all along. So why did we have to wait for the Ministry of Propaganda to come out and tell us, and then couch it so that it sounds like it's all okay, that really all this is for our benefit? I'll tell you what. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. It's on Fox News. NSA surveillance reaches broader than publicly acknowledged. The network surveillance system has the capacity to spy on 75% of all U.S. internet traffic. The Wall Street Journal broke this story. They won't let you see it unless you subscribe, so you got to read it off of other people's reports. Citing current and former NSA officials of the 75% figure, the paper reports the agency can observe more of Americans' online communications than officials have publicly acknowledged. Gee whiz, you're kidding. You actually believed what we were being told by Clapper the liar? That guy claps on and claps off lies like the TV commercial. The NSA system of programs filters communications, achieved with the help of telecommunications companies. It's designed to look for communications that either start or end abroad. Now, here's where you put on your thinking cap and you read between the lines. That either start or end abroad, or happen to pass through the U.S. between foreign countries. However, the official told the Journal the system's reach is so broad that it is more likely that purely domestic communications will be intercepted as a byproduct of the hunt for foreign ones. The algorithms they use are filters designed to let high-value information through amid more benign chatter. Look, the question really here is, how much information are they getting? How much information are they capturing? How much information are they saving? I'm going to tell you what the deal is. Irrespective of what they tell you, here's what's really happening. They're getting all of it. All of it. They're storing all of it in Utah and Fort Meade and other similar implementation facilities, where these buildings are basically gigantic hard drives the size of stadiums. The Utah facility is the size of 17 football fields. And the truth is, they're storing all of it. Now, they're not actively monitoring all of it. I get that, because it's a flood of information too large for them to monitor. The problem is that they store it for later retrieval and monitoring, or actual listening, or search review and what have you. And so what we have is that all of this information which is being stored is being added to what? Let me hear it. Come on now. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. The dossiers that are being built on every American. You're right. They're building dossiers with your tax information, the new healthcare data hub, and all of the surveillance. And they're building dossiers so that they can compartmentalize all of your searches, all of your phone calls, all of your GPS tracking and information, all of your purchases under pocket litter, which is, that parking receipt you got, that credit card you used at Barnes & Noble to buy a book, what books you took out of the library, where you went for lunch, how you got there, all the scanning of license plates that are being done by law enforcement in every city and state around the country, all of the traffic light cameras and all the information that it's collecting about you and your plates and your vehicle. All of this is being stored in compartmentalized directories labeled John Smith, Jane Doe. All of your email, all of your internet searching, all of the sites that you visit, all of the text that you read on the internet, all of the ebooks you read, everything you do on Kindles, everything you do on a laptop, everything you do on an iPad, all of it's being captured. All of it is being stored. Your telephone calls, all the call records, both landline and wireless, the contents of all your calls, both wireless and wireline, are all being stored. The NSA's own admission is for $300 per person, they can build a hard drive for you personally that will store your entire life. In other words, your dossier. How many times have you watched a spy movie or a suspense show or whatever where they hand the hitman the guy's file, right? And it's got photographs in there, it's got records of where he goes and how he gets there, his timetables and so forth and so on. Why do they hand that to the hitman? So that he can follow your traffic patterns and figure out where you're going to be vulnerable, right? So then you see him sitting up on a roof or hiding in a window in a hotel with a rifle, and bang, he gets the guy. They know he goes to so-and-so dinner for dinner on Friday nights to this pub or that restaurant, or he always travels this route to work, or he always goes to this place to meet his girlfriend, or whatever the case may be. What you don't realize is that in concert with all of this data that they're storing, when they have a reason or a need to look at you personally, all of this is information, all of this information is available to them. All they've got to do is say, you know what? We saw a disturbing thing come out of John Smith. He was at a public event the other day, and one of our informants told us that he said this. Pull up John Smith's file and let's see what we got on him. So they pull up John Smith's file. And then they find out John's got, he was involved in some real estate deal. And they start looking at it and they say, we got a way that we can sit there and take this out of context and make it look like John actually did something wrong. Or maybe John actually did do something wrong. Or maybe John's got a girl on the side. Or maybe John's got a problem with alcohol. Or maybe John's got a problem with little boys. Or maybe John's got a problem with, whatever, right? Maybe it doesn't even matter. The point is, this is exactly what's going on in our nation today. And by their own admission and by whistleblowers coming out of the NSA, including Binney, who actually told us that he held Barack Obama's actual file in his hand back in the mid-2000s. In 2004, he said, I was standing there holding the file for then Senator Barack Obama. Guys, if they got all this information on you, Joe Sixpack, What do you think they've got on senators, on congressmen, on judges, on prosecutors, on lawyers, on policymakers, on the governors, on the lieutenant governors, on the House reps, the state reps? What do you think they've got on them? Are you naive enough to think those people are infallible? Really? Are you naive enough to think that they will not do anything to keep their skeletons hidden? Are you naive enough to think that what you see transpiring in the news and the press every single day, where you see people stepping up who are theoretically conservatives, they actually are rhinos, that's how you'd refer to them, are standing up and betraying not only the electorate in their states, but also the nation as a general whole, with things like the NDAA, with things like immigration, with things like health care, and the ACA, the Obamacare. You see, all of these betrayals can be linked back to they've been compromised. How have they been compromised? Well, there's really only a couple of ways, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure them out. One, they've been promised a seat at the table, and this is the table that rises as a phoenix from the ashes of liberty. It's called the phoenix of tyranny. And they've been promised a seat at that table. Now, whether or not that materializes or they're snuffed when their usefulness is at an end is anybody's guess. But they've fallen for it, so they're giving you up. The other is that they've been compromised purely as a function of greed. And lobbyists and political organizations and corporations and this president and this administration and other administrations in the past have filled their re-election coffers, and they've literally sold you out for 30 pieces of silver. That's the Judas. Okay? If that's the case, then they've already sold you down the river for their own personal political and life security. In other words, the security that comes with a job that pays you a staggering sum of money of 175 or 195 grand a year, maybe 200 grand a year or whatever. The fourth is that they've been compromised because in all the dossier development, the NSA or the FBI or whoever they're sharing the information with, and by the way, we now know they are sharing the information with other law enforcement agencies like the DEA. That's an established fact. And by the way, so this is supposed to be domestic terrorism surveillance, right, to protect us from international terrorism. But then they're taking this and they're saying, hey, we found this guy named Charlie who, by the way, is smuggling drugs. We found an email from him. So you can use this information to go set up an investigation on him. That has nothing to do with national security. So the third and final alternative here towards corruption is the fact that they've got on these policymakers, representatives, judges, lawyers, policymakers of all kinds and all stripes, they've got some secret on them that they don't want known, right? I mean, that's really, or something that could be used to prosecute them for some violation of the law. Maybe it's election campaign finance law. Maybe it's something that it would be a criminal action. You know, Harry Reid has got so many dirty real estate deals under his belt, it's no surprise that he's the guy who's blocking everything in Congress. I'm just pointing out the obvious, folks. This is not something I'm making up. This is something that's apparently evident to anyone who wants to even just remotely even look. Harry Reid has, and his kids, are involved in so many scurrilous land deals that he's benefited from as a result of his votes in Congress. I'm telling you right now that the NSA's got a dossier on him that would make War and Peace look like a paperback novel. You wonder why the guy blocks everything coming from the House and won't let it on the Senate floor. I'll tell you why. Because the order comes down that if you don't do this and you don't block that we're going to expose you. That's it. Expose his dirty deal. Expose the fact that he visits the bunny ranch or whatever the heck it is in Nevada where he comes from twice a month or something. I mean, look, people will hide any truth, even if it's to the rest of the country. Nobody really cares. But they're embarrassed about it. Maybe you got a senator who's gay, and he doesn't want anybody to know. He's married, got kids. So they catch him in a gay liaison, and they take a picture. Now, he is therefore compromised. If you don't think this level of intrigue happens, and it's only television or movies that show you this kind of intrigue, you're a naive idiot. Let's just call a spade a spade. Oops, did I say that? That's politically incorrect. I might have been racist in my statement. No, I'm not. That's just an old adage. Kermany, America, I'm about to give up on you. I'm about to realize that no matter how hard I work to educate and inform, to motivate and activate, the vast majority of America doesn't want to see the truth and will stick their heads in the sand like ostriches, just waiting for the boogeyman to leave. And if the boogeyman is standing over your bed with a kitchen knife about to plunge it into your body, why would you pull the covers up over your head and wait for your inevitable end? Wouldn't you rather fight back? I mean, you know the outcome if you don't. Isn't it better to just lash out with a foot and hope you hit him and disturb the pattern? I mean, please. Look, we're so far gone at this point that unless we make, and I mean immediate exigent change, that's emergency change, we're going to find ourselves publicly informed by the Ministry of Propaganda that we have woken up in the new 1984 police state, except it's going to be 2014. We are in real trouble here, people. So let's get off the topic of policymakers and get on to the topic of how does this affect you? Why do you care? Well, if they can be corrupted, so can you. And when you go to a property rights coalition meeting, or you go to a rally and they start using B.O.S.S on you, which we're going to get into in just a second, what happens when they pull your file? What do they got on you? What do they got on you to say, if you continue to participate in this movement, nay, if you continue to be a leader in this movement, we're going to release this scandalous information on you. We're going to mail this picture to your wife. We're going to send this letter to your kids and let them know. Let them know what? I don't even care. It doesn't matter. We're going to reveal to the public that you've got a problem with cocaine or alcohol. Oh my goodness, I better do exactly as I'm told. And then what happens? You fade away. You drop off the radar and you go into hiding. You tell the people that you've been involved with politically, you know what? I'm so busy, I got to make a living, I can't deal with this anymore, and you step out. You show up for the occasional meeting. Maybe you're turned, and maybe now you're a spy for them. Maybe you become the intelligence gathering informer who works for them. If you don't think the federal government works that way, let me clarify something for you. I spent 3 years in a federal penitentiary for a crime I didn't commit, and I'm going to tell you something right now. 85% of the people that were in there were rats. You know why? Because they were promised a shorter sentence. And I know for a fact it was the case because I did a lot of their legal work. That's how I survived in there. You got to buy your own toothpaste. You got to buy your own toilet, your own toiletries. So you want to wash your hair, you got to buy your own shampoo. And so I did people's legal work. And when you get their legal paperwork, you can see right in there that they filed for a friend of the court brief through the prosecutor that says this guy was of substantial assistance. Substantial assistance. You know what substantial assistance means? You gave up the names of your friends and cohorts. Then they use that testimony to go nail others. So don't think this doesn't matter to you. It does. And if you don't think it matters to you because you've got clean hands, What about all the other people in that small group you're a part of who don't? What happens when they turn on you? Then what are you going to do? You see, this is part and parcel of the problem. We're being shifted towards a society that we've seen in plenty of other places. The Soviet Union, East Germany, Nazi Germany before the war, where neighbors are rewarded for spying on neighbors, people for spying on their co-workers, people for spying on members of their, political groups or organizations, their religious organizations and groups. So all they got to do is get a guy in a church who is a fundamentalist church, and they find out he's gay. Boy, what would he do to keep that secret from the rest of the congregation hearing? Well, he might just turn out to be an informer who keeps somebody at DHS fully informed of every political discussion that's had, so that the church's 501c3 can be threatened. Or they can keep a watch on a minister or on a deacon or an elder or an associate pastor or somebody who's politically active. Don't you smell the rat's nest here? Don't you see what all this is about? There's only one way to clean this up and end it. That is the absolute destruction of all of this data. The complete, total, and utter destruction. Not erased, destroyed. Because if it's not misused in the hands of the scum who took it in the first place, then it'll be misused in the hands of some other scum who will come along and seize upon an opportunity that is just too tasty to pass up. I'm telling you that what's going on right now with the NSA is the death knell of freedom. The bells of the death dirge are ringing loud. If you've got your fingers in your ear, you better get them out. You don't have to be, a political science major to see what's going on here. Let's wrap this up. I've got 3 minutes left, and I got to talk to you about B.O.S.S. I want you to find out and do some homework on this. Facial scanning is making gains in surveillance. New York Times. The federal system and the Department of Homeland Security is crowd testing testing a crowd scanning project called the Biometric Optical Surveillance System, B.O.S.S. 2 years in development, originally for use overseas to identify at polling places where suicide bombers who were known to be insurgents were standing in crowds. But guess what? Now they're using it on us. Is that any surprise to anyone? Of course not. They say it's a couple of years away. They've actually tested it. It's not really fully functional yet. But, here's the problem. What this will allow is the TSA to sit there with these cameras and scan everybody who pours through the doors of a stadium or a political event or a rally or anything else, identify the insurgents in there, match it up with databases, including driver's licenses. They take the picture from two angles so that they effectively can get a three-dimensional image of your face. And then they take that image and they match it against a database of known insurgents. By the way, what do you think all the facial recognition is about under Real ID and driver's licenses? Now they've got your Real ID three-dimensional image. They've got the facial recognition map mathematically built for you. Then they install that in the terrorist system that's got the watch list, and anytime you show up in a crowd, they know you're there. People, are we blind to realities here? I mean, really, this is some incredible stuff that most Americans are pretending is not happening. And I'm we're out of time. Not just now, but as a nation. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Find us on YouTube, where you can find this and every other program that we do, broken up into half-hour segments so you can email links to your friends, educate, inform, make aware, motivate, and activate yourself and others. We'll be right back. Stick with us for the next segment. It's going to be about Grok Law, Silent Circle, Lava Bit, and the loss of all of these independent organizations that are educating America about the treason that's going down, and they're being shut down systematically. You need to know about it. We'll be right back.